All right, I'm Tarrence. I'm one of the co-founders of Cartridge and Dojo, and I'm going to share a little bit about building an on-chain arcade. So we started Cartridge about 2 years ago with this idea of building fully on-chain games, and we've done a lot of stuff since then. And I'm going to share a little bit of that journey with you guys very briefly. So first of all, like, why would you build an on-chain game? I think there's a bunch of different reasons, but there's two really major challenges that game developers or studios or indie developers really face today, and it's all around funding and distribution. And I think crypto and blockchains fundamentally provide like great affordances to solve a lot of these challenges. Like, one is unlocking capital markets, right? We've obviously seen that blockchains are great at doing this. We've done a bunch of it. We've done ICOs, we've done NFTs, we've done meme coins. And you can do this for games, and we saw a lot of teams doing this with Web 2.5 kind of asset ownership stuff. Once you put the game on chain, you enable a lot more interesting, complex things that can be used for generating long-term revenues and funding for the development of the game over time. You also have the cold start problem, which is like, one of the biggest challenges for games is bootstrapping an ecosystem of people that care about your game. And blockchains, as we've seen, are really great at solving this. You can just ask Cardano. And we have real-world ownership and stakeholder alignment. So a lot of people have sold in the past, especially in kind of the 2.5 type games where you just have assets on chain, and you have like the game off chain, this idea of asset ownership, but it's not real asset ownership in the same sense as it is in kind of DeFi and stuff, where all of the logic of the protocols and the revenues, all the cash flows and everything are fully on chain, fully accounted for, and have immutable properties. And once you put a game fully on chain, you essentially remove this oracle problem, and it massively expands the design space of what you can do. So we've been focused on doing that. We started Cartridge again like 2 years ago. The first product we built was the arcade, which I'll show you a little bit in a second. But actually, we had to take a big step back and focus a lot on the toolchain for building on-chain games. And we built a bunch of things in that regard. We have Dojo on the left here, which has a few different components. It's got the actual implementation of the world, which essentially replaces the back end of the game with provable logic. You have Saya, which is a settlement orchestrator, generates zero-knowledge proofs and settles them. This is the part that is integrated with Celestia and can use Celestia data availability layer. You have Tori, which is an automatic indexer, Katana for sequencing. And then on the right, you have like the suite of products that we've built around the Dojo ecosystems for bringing these games to market and enabling people to play them. And so today we have about 30 different studios building in our ecosystem, about 60 titles. All of these like basically fully on-chain games implemented entirely in Cairo, and can be like a zero-knowledge proof can be generated that attests to the integrity of the computation. And we have 3 different products that we've built around it on the Cartridge side. One is Controller, which is an embedded account focused on onboarding for players playing games. The other is Slot, which is an execution layer for on-chain games that enables real-time and kind of like the computational capacity necessary to bring these types of experiences on-chain. And the Arcade, which is a tool for live ops and distribution and discovery of the games in the Dojo ecosystem. So Controller, it looks a little bit like this. It's an embedded wallet. It can be tailored towards the game. Basically, every game in the team is, game in the ecosystem is using it today. It abstracts across like all the different like back-end complexities. Like, there's no notion of blockchains and stuff like particular chains to the user. It's fully abstracted, so you can be playing, on top of the Katana instance that's selling to Celestia or Ethereum or Base or Starknet, whatever. Doesn't really matter. You just have your player identity. It's universal across them all. It has things like starter packs, credits, passkeys, paymasters, sessions. So it's a very seamless user experience. The Arcade is a product that we relaunched last week. It's basically designed for inventory management. It has metrics, like real-time metrics around the games. It has an activity feed where you can see all the real-time activity that's happening in the ecosystem, and has a quest and achievements, like leaderboard type mechanism where games, as you play, you can unlock different achievements and points and stuff like that. People love that. I think like one of the cool unlocks of on-chain games is you can think of Dojo as essentially like a specification in a similar sense to like an ERC20 specification of building a game. And once you have this like standardization around a lot of these core primitives that are shared across different games, you can start to build very powerful infrastructure and tooling around it, like the Arcade. So this is a screenshot of it, and another one. That's the achievements. Here you can see like the the dashboard of just all the actions that people are taking in real time as they unlock achievements. If you, I'll share a QR code in a second. You can take a look. There's just like thousands and thousands of transactions every minute, like of people playing different games. It's pretty cool. And on the left, a bunch of the different games, and then you have the player identity, you have the different achievements that they can check out and unlock. And then you have the inventory management where you have NFTs, ERC20s, those types of things. This is one of the games with Survivor. And then the final piece of the puzzle that we've shipped with Cartridge for the Dojo stack is called Slot. It's basically a horizontal execution layer for the Dojo ecosystem, so you can spin up sequencers for games. It can be for like a long-running game. So we have like a game called Eternum. That's a game designed to run, for example, 3 weeks. But then we also have like card type, like poker games that are just designed to run for a few minutes. You can just spin up the compute you need. You can generate a proof for it. You can settle it wherever you want. You can get regional deployments that are close to your user, so you have very low latency. You basically have real-time interactions with them. It feels like what a traditional game is. So we've tried to just bridge like a lot of the gaps between traditional game kind of expectations from a player perspective, which is very responsive, very high throughput, very cheap, and enable them in the blockchain context. And all of this kind of enabled by technologies like zero-knowledge proofs and Celestia. And this is a brief diagram of what the architecture looks like. You have all the controllers, you have slot instances for the different games, you have the settlement orchestrator with Saya generating the proofs and settling them to some target chain. So we support EVM chains, Celestia, Starknet, and we're going to have a Solana verifier really soon. So that's a quick overview. You can scan this QR code and it'll open you to the arcade, and you can check out like all the games that people are playing right now. You can sign up. There's a game built with Celestia called Evolute that is hosting a LAN party tonight, I think at this venue, right? Yeah. At 7 p.m. And you can play that on mobile too, so you can check that out. I'm happy to answer any questions.
What kind of challenges did you face when onboarding Web 2 game developers to Web 3, and how did you solve them?
I think, a lot of the onboarding challenges, like in general, the general onboarding challenges of blockchains, I think so. One is obviously like a contingent of gamers that have a kind of an allergic reaction to NFTs. And we haven't really tried to address that problem yet. A lot of like the technology is abstracted. We don't talk necessarily about blockchains. It's more like about enabling like the core like interesting things that blockchains enable. One of the solutions that we've rolled out is passkey authentication and some social sign-in options. So you can very easily create a controller. The controller is cross-platform, so you can use it on desktop. You can use it on Windows. On Windows or on mobile, whatever. It's like. And it's embeddable in different platforms like Unity and Unreal and the different SDKs that a lot of games are built with. We have this primitive called credits that allows you to pay for things with a credit card without KYC. So essentially, like, because we operate a paymaster, we can take traditional payment methods and use them to pay for network fees without the user having to get the network's native asset. So we can avoid the whole KYC step there. So you can onboard to a game without having to do obviously KYC kills like a lot of the onboarding funnel, and then other pieces just like maybe session tokens. There's a bunch of like everything we do is basically focused on just like streamlining the onboarding experience, and they all kind of play into there. But I think those are kind of the big ones.
Could you say that implementing on-chain economy to a game helps or hurts growing the player base?
I think it still remains to be seen. I think I think a lot of it just comes down to like how you design it. I think like an easy way to hurt yourself is to use kind of the ownership of the in-game currency as a way to drive like farming of your game to pump like vanity metrics. I think like that always ends badly. But I think there are ways to design in-game economies that can be sustainable over the long term. But it's very much like a very experimental field. Like across like not even just games, like just blockchain protocols in general, right? We're still trying to figure out what that looks like. And then there's a regulatory component that makes it tough as well. So
just a follow-up on that. Like when you say long term, but you're talking about a game, I don't know the exact metric of the average lifetime of a game, but I can imagine that is probably not long term. So, it's like are you trying to have a viable economic model for the lifetime of the game, or like long term beyond the lifetime of a game? Like, how do you think about that?
I think it changes the economics of video games a lot. Like when you have a game that's on a blockchain and can conceivably live forever and can be operated as long as someone cares about operating it. I mean, we've seen in like the physical world that games can live forever, essentially. Like card games like poker or sports like football and stuff like that. Those build sustainable companies with sustainable revenue models over the long term. And we've seen in the digital space, I mean, we've seen like World of Warcraft and Dota, League of Legends, Counter-Strike. We've seen titles. I mean, most of the titles that are played today are titles that were actually developed like in the early 2000s. So I think I don't know how to answer your question specifically, but I think like the aspirational goal is obviously for a game to live as long as possible, and I think that blockchain gives you some of the core affordances necessary to enable that over the longer term. Cool. Done? Cool. Thank you, everyone.